Hi, welcome to the Toddcast for January 4th, 2012. Today is the day after the Iowa caucuses, and just like whenever Iowa is in the national news, say for example a deadly snowstorm or a deadly tornado, a deadly flood, some sort of deadly agricultural industry accident in the meat supply, any kind of disaster like that, or like the Iowa caucuses, I will get a series of calls and emails from friends in New York, since they know that I'm from Iowa, and now they know that I'm stuck here for the winter. And I got one this morning that I thought was kind of interesting, and I think maybe it indicates that I'm a little bit out of touch Iowa-wise. It was this video that I think maybe went viral called "Iowa Nice," and it's sort of it's sort of a rebuttal for all those analyses of Iowa culture that invariably happen every 3 years when the media comes out here to cover the caucuses. And in fact, the Toddcast I did yesterday, it's this Iowa Nice, although I'm pretty sure it came out before that Toddcast is a rebuttal to that. And I thought it was interesting, and there are a couple things that I think I did talk about yesterday, but I definitely wanted to go over again today, sort of point by point, that the person in the video is making. If you haven't seen it, it's this guy who, I think he's going through Des Moines, and maybe goes a little bit outside of Des Moines for some photo ops. But he goes through and talks about Iowa. And what I think is really interesting about that document, that video document, is that it's a very Iowa sort of statement, in that it tries to be two things at once, two things that it cannot possibly be at the same time, which is what Iowans try to do with their culture. Out here people try to say that they're from a distinct, homogenous culture, and yet they're very diverse. Try to say that it's a real rural place, but yet it's urban or even urbane. Try to say that it's very close-knit and yet very outgoing. And yeah, so I guess what I'm going to do is, to cut to the chase and to keep down the amount of time, because it takes forever to upload these things on YouTube. I'm just going to go point by point. One of the first things is that the Iowa Nice video tries to contest is this notion that Iowans are conservative. And in fact that they're progressive, and he notes that Iowans have voted Democratic in 5 out of the last 6 elections. I'm just going to overlook the fact that there hasn't been a progressive Democrat in any of the last 6 elections. The last progressive Democrat to run for election was George McGovern in 1972, and even though he was from neighboring South Dakota, he got slaughtered in Iowa. But not only that, that one Republican that the Iowans voted for was George Bush, okay, the second time. After it was clear that he'd already stolen an election, that he'd given tax cuts to the rich that led to the current, fiscal nightmare that we're in, and that he started at least one, maybe 2 wars that we don't need to fight. Despite all that, which was evidently clear by 2004, Iowans came out and voted for him. So, there's your progressivism right there. Also talks about the fact that Iowans, brought about gay marriage. No, they didn't. It was a handful of Iowa judges that brought about gay marriage through their interpretation of the Constitution, which anybody who's fair-minded at all, interpreting just about anybody's Constitution, but especially the Iowa Constitution, would have done anyhow. And what they overlook, what the person overlooks, is that any of those judges that was up for election within a year of that decision were run out resoundingly. And in fact, a Democratic governor lost the race to an ex-Republican governor, largely on that issue of repealing that gay marriage allowance, which is still on the books, but Iowans are working hammer and tong to overturn that ruling. And in fact, there wasn't a single candidate, all right, in this state who didn't come out and say that that was wrong. And in fact, Barack Obama has reversed his viewpoints on marriage. I'm not saying so that he can take Iowa, but he does need to take Iowa. So that's probably why. He now says it should be left up to the states, which I love. An African American president saying that states' rights are the way to go, and that separate but equal is okay. Anyhow, I'm getting off track. And then there's this notion of some sort of past progressivism in Iowa, that the first ever female lawyer was from Iowa, and this was in 1869. What is left out of the video is that in 1860, Iowa passed a law to ban all black people, period. Not just slaves. They weren't banning slavery, but all black people, period, were not allowed to come into this state. And then this long history of racism in the state, including lynchings by the Ku Klux Klans in the 1930s, is what led to the dismal percentage of African Americans in this state. It's kind of coming back, but still, this state is over 90% white. And I love how Iowans try to explain this. They say, oh, black people don't like the cold weather. Never mind the virulent racism, the sort of casual racism of that statement. Yeah, it was either the cold weather or all those lynchings in the 30s, But also, never mind that, I've been to the Rio Grande Valley. I've been to Arizona, okay? The people that live next door to my parents in those places weren't named Latoya and Raheem, okay? They were named Vern and Dot. White people don't like the cold weather either, okay? So I don't know what that's all about. What else do we have here? Sorry. Oh, yeah, this notion that Iowa is not a rural place. And the guy says that 4 out of 5 Iowans live in a city. Well, actually, no Iowans live in a city. There are no cities in Iowa. Des Moines is a big town. Okay, New York is a city. Chicago is a city. Los Angeles is a city. Des Moines is a big town, and in fact it's not even really a big town, it's Sprawlville. It's a bunch of little towns connected together, and the people who live there only live there because it's closer to their jobs, which were moved into Des Moines. Most of those people, if they could live in a small town, they would, so they wouldn't have to go to the mall and look at a handful of people who aren't exactly like them and get frightened by that. Okay? But never mind that, he also talks about how, right after saying that 4 out of 5 Iowans live in an urban environment, and, maybe are urbane, he talks about how much food that Iowa produces. Well, again, that's only a handful of people, and when he says that, he's walking down this aisle full of vegetables and fruits. Okay, none of those were produced in Iowa. The farmers here don't make fruits and vegetables. And in fact, the ones who try to do that, who try to bring that back through an organic way, are looked at as kind of kooks. All right? What Iowans produce are food to go into animals, okay, or additives to go into food. Okay, so they make pork chops and Twinkies and Gatorade. Alright, that's what gets made here. And there's some statistic thrown out that every one Iowa farmer feeds 155 people. Well, since there's only like 10 Iowa farmers left, okay, they're starving the rest of the world. But that's another thing that Iowans want to talk about all the time. We feed the world. Well, if that were true, there'd be no hungry people on Earth. There'd be no people starving to death. And we know that happens. But of course, in their racism, Iowans allow themselves to think that, because then they think, well, those people are just too lazy to work for their food. And I will give this to Iowans. They are incredibly industrious. They are hard-working. Work is the holy grail to them. That's true. But, other people, you think other people are so damn lazy that they would starve? No. They starve because food is too expensive, through price supports that make this small number of Iowa farmers richer and richer. All right, so there's your progressivism there. Oh, also he talks about Iowa has a low unemployment, one of the lowest unemployments for states in the U.S. What that overlooks is that anybody, right, who didn't have a job left here in the early 80s, when the economy was even worse here than it is in the rest of the country right now. Iowans my age left in droves when they got out of high school and college because there were no jobs here. And nobody's going to live here if they don't have a job. There's no reason to live here if you don't have a job. There's nothing that this place has to offer except employment. Okay, again, it's freezing in the winter. All right, never mind that, it stinks. All those animals that you eat, okay, are wallowing in their own filth in giant barns all around. And no matter where you drive, it stinks here. Okay, it stinks like animals wallowing in their own filth. It's just something that Iowans get used to. Right? Oh, and then the biggest whopper is, like, when you're flying over, wave at us because we'll wave back because we're nice. No, they won't. Iowans are not nice. They're not, sorry, I'm taking my time here. They're not nice compared to people in New York, and they're not nice compared to people in Oakland. If you wave at somebody in New York and Oakland, they will wave back at you, and they will ask how you're doing. Here, you can wave at somebody, and if they don't know you, they won't wave back. All right? They'll look at you long enough to figure out what your deal is, to see what kind of interest they can get talking with their fellows about you once you've turned your back, but they won't look at you. The people won't smile at you unless they know you, and even, you know, if they know you, they won't do it unless they like you. Okay, people just walk by each other all the time. I didn't really notice that until I was back here this time after being in friendlier places, especially Oakland. So there, that's my rebuttal to Iowa nice. Again, there are some things that commend this place, but none of the things in that video are it. Alright, I'll talk more about Iowa in future Toddcasts, which, yeah, I guess you're going to be looking forward to. Until then, take care.